Hey guys, it's Daniel. Welcome back.
A general question for Phil. I remember, Tim, last time you and I spoke, you said something that, like, to this day, it's been stuck in my head, and I've been, like, trying to think, how does this work? Because it was just so cool. I remember you told me that when Phil would do his screams and he would sing, he would actually not be stressing out his voice. And, like, Terry Dade had a way to do it where, like, he'd be kind of close to the mic and was just using a technique. Do you know, I mean, if you'd be able to elaborate, like, how do you get a scream that powerful without actually exerting yourself? Do you know how he did it?
Well, shy anything shy of just sheer talent and him knowing how to go about doing that would be, it would just bastardize the art form of which Phil brought to the table.
Hmm.
But with the understanding, and Sterling, just so that you're up to speed with basically what I said, a lot of people think that maybe Phil was standing behind a super expensive microphone screaming his guts out. And the truth is that it was a really very inexpensive microphone in the control room, doors closed. And I never was really privy to, how loud those vocals were. And I can guarantee you it wasn't screaming at the top of his lungs. It had everything to do with the technique, the simple fact that, he's got an SM58 on his vocal, really close mic, proximity effect, and there's all kinds of really cool shit that you can do when you're that close and intimate to a microphone. But for me to sit here and try to tell you, oh, I've got this really grand idea of how Phil went about doing all of that would be a lie. It's simply, here's what I can tell you,
Okay.
is that it's not exactly what we all think that it was. It was a SM58 with really good control coming from Phil. And if I could, elaborate on that, with a master producer going, let's do it this way. We're going to turn the speakers down. We're going to close the door. We're going to lock out the rest of the world, and we're going to nail this down. And I could be wrong about this, but these vocals didn't take that long to do. It wasn't like we were there. Daniel, I've done lots of pop projects and stuff like that where it takes freaking months to get vocals to the point where the producer's happy with what's going on. And this didn't take long to do. And I contribute that to, again, an individual who really has just an incredible amount of vocal control, knew exactly what he was going for. And then to take someone like a Terry Date and go, all right, we're going to make this become a reality. And I tell my students this very same thing. How do you get this scream thing? I think I mentioned to there's different breathing techniques and all this kind of good stuff. I never really ever thought about stuff like that. But it took a little bit of some educating, from vocalists who do this all the time. Some do it better than others. And I'll just say, in my humble opinion, Phil was one of the best ones who had mastered a technique that really worked for the band.
I can second that for sure. It is a technique that he knows what he's capable of and what his body does, and I think that's speaks to him being zoned in on that. And yeah, it's a 58 in a control room, no headphones, speakers. Sometimes they're up, sometimes they're not. It depends on what he needs to feel the music. I know this just from having to record his vocals a few times. It's always been a 58 proximity effect, as close as you can get, and he's working it and doing some things, and it's all a lot of different techniques going down there. Not a whole lot of compression, not a whole lot of EQ, just kind of letting it come in flat,
I hear you.
And then putting a little polish on it later.
So, like, if I may ask then, I mean, because from whether it's Far Beyond Driven or Southern Trendkill or Reinventing, did his approach change, or was he consistently doing the vocals the same way?
Very consistent. Very consistent. In fact, even all the way up through Reinventing, the still stayed the same. It was me and Dime recording his vocals on Reinventing the Steel. And it was, we had a setup for him where it was a 58 going through a distressor in very minimal EQ, just taking out some low mids and letting the rest just be what it is. Go to tape with that. And then we had another mic set up where there was headphones, and he could go out, and if it was like something he felt that he needed a condenser mic for, we would have that ready for him. But that would be just like a few different things here and there. But he always came in to the studio. He was absolutely 100% prepared, had his vision for what he wanted to do. Dime would just have me set up and go, all right, I want you to have 4 tracks or 6 tracks ready to go for him. And because it moved fast, it moved real fast with Philip. And so you had to capture everything, and you go, all right, I want to double this phrase. I'm going to do a harmony to this phrase. I'm going to sing this line into the nice mic, blah, 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 blah. And then it was structured before he even walked in there. So he was always very prepared, had his notes.
That's
and his
really
shit
interesting.
together.
And would he be the kind of guy who, like for example, I spoke with Mike Frazier recently, and he said that when he would record AC/DC, Brian Johnson would physically hold the microphone. And another guy I spoke to said that Perry Farrell would run around the studio recording vocals. Was there anything like eccentric or different that Phil did that stuck out?
Nah, very straightforward.
That's cool.
Very straightforward. He would hold the 58. I've had people record before that are eccentric. They need to be in the dark. They need to have it, this little red lamp over this or whatever. I have to have my little workstation here, or I want to be all the way in the booth far away. I don't want anybody to see me. But most of them are pretty straight ahead, pretty straightforward. But yeah, I've got some weird stories, but they don't have Phil in them.
Hey.
He was pretty straight ahead.
Hey, fair enough. We were talking about how Dime, you guys would record twice to kind of get that double. Would it be the same thing with Phil? Would you guys double his vocals?
Not all, but some. Like if he's emphasizing a phrase or a word, then yes, we would double things up. But not most of the time with him. If it's just a verse vocal, that it was a single thing. It was a single vocal. If we're looking to get that effect, then yeah, he'd pop a double on there, and he might do a low part to it to kind of thicken it up. But yeah, most of the time it's just a single vocal.
So, of course, one of the trademark characteristics of Pantera is the intensity of Phil Anselmo's vocals. Considering how intense his vocals are and how much he screams, did he ever blow out his voice during the recording sessions for Far Beyond Driven?
No. So, again, as you probably are very well aware, audio can be very magical.
Yeah.
And a part of magic is sleight of hand, if you will. Mm-hmm. And in this case here, not to give away secrets or anything of that nature, but I'll say it like this. Phil was never stressed on his vocals, ever. As a matter of fact, Phil never went out into the studio proper to do vocals. All the vocals were done right there in the control room. So that having been said, being in a control room, you're going to have speakers in the control room. So that means he also never wore headphones while doing any of this stuff. So that means, you got speakers on in the control room. And, at last I remember, we used a Shure SM58 for his vocals, every one of them. And so it was a technique that Phil used vocally that gets that aggressiveness, along with I can't shy Terry Date on knowing how to compress vocals and how to get that energy out of there without having to stress those vocals so much. Now, I don't want to take away from Phil either, because one of the things that I've learned doing metal music is that these vocals, there's a technique to all of that stuff, and it ain't for everybody. Mm-hmm. So, I have to give him, a good, probably 100% of the credit on knowing how to go about doing that without blowing his vocals out. It's really, really hard on those vocal cords. And, I don't know. Here's what I do know is when vocals were being done, Phil only requested that it be he and Terry in the control room. So Sterling and I never got access to, the actual tracking of the vocals. But I mean, this is a big place, and there's a hallway outside the control room. And if it's like really loud and he's having to scream or something of that nature, we would hear that. I mean, doors and all, you would hear that. And I can tell you that we never heard screaming or anything coming out of the control room. So that tells me that it was a technique that he was using, along with Terry knowing how to ramp up the preamp and then, contain it.
Cool. Wow. Okay.
So it's definitely a technique.
That is very cool. That is arguably the coolest thing you've said to me. That is, I had no idea. So you don't have to actually like scream like a crazy person to get that sound.
Mm-mm.
Really? Wow. Okay.
No.
That's cool. Mental note, because I've been wanting to record something myself, and I've been scared to blow my vocals out. So I'm glad you told me that. That's cool. One of the funnier stories with that record is the cover art. What exactly happened there? Because I know that it was something else, and then they switched it, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I actually got to see. I think that wound up being okay in Europe.
Really?
We I also seem to think about the time, and I probably shouldn't say this, but about the time that record came out, we had someone in office whose wife was really opposed to, lyric content and all this other stuff. Well, I'm assuming that we both know what that original artwork looked like.
Yeah.
And so it was, for lack of better wording, I'll just say it was kind of banned here in the States. But it was picked up in Europe, and of course, if anybody is curious about that, they can go take a look and see what that looks like. But honestly, I got to tell you, I kind of like the version that they've got.
Yeah,
that's
cool,
pretty intense when you think about a skull and a drill bit going through it.
Yeah. I actually think that version, it's a cooler cover than the original one. It's just I've always been like, oh, that was an interesting original choice.
I don't think it shocked anybody when we first saw it. It's like, oh, yeah, that sounds like something that these guys might want to put out there, Yeah, we also had record company, folk that would drop in every once in a while and get the occasional reins pulled back just a little bit. Hey, we can't do that, or whatever, but never really seemed to slow the guys down at all.